All right. So yeah, well, welcome to today's webinar, WeChat training. I think all of you here have attended the presentation from yesterday. So, but just beforehand, because I think I know most of you, but then most of you probably want to get to know each other as well. So I just probably want to spend maybe the first 5 minutes to just go around and talking about, hey, what is your feedback? If you can give me some feedback about the presentation from yesterday, as well as what is your expectation with WeChat training and what you're trying to get from this webinar. Moreno, because you're already ready, would you like to start?
Yes, WeChat for me was a novelty, and I don't really know at the moment how I can benefit using WeChat. That will only come out once I listen to your training and find out more about WeChat.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Uh, Gustavo, do you want to jump into the chat?
Yeah, I just can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I just wonder how can I use WeChat in my business because I am owner of the import and export company making business between Canada and South America, and I'm looking for Asian markets now. And I think this is a good tool because some of my customers, some of my clients are Asian people, and they suggest me that I have to use WeChat. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, very well. Welcome. Welcome.
Thanks.
Cesar, are you up for some introduction? Okay, so I'm not sure if you all see it.
Guys, hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Cesar.
Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure if it was gonna work. Well, I don't know anything about WeChat except what you told us yesterday. However, after your presentation, I am very keen to learn more about it. I saw a couple of videos last night. It seems to be very powerful. And also, I want to be able to learn how I can communicate with it. And ultimately, I want to learn how to do business with the Asian market.
Okay, very well. Very well. Okay, so with that expectation in mind, these are not small expectations, so I'll try to deliver what I can. So just before we jumped in, I just want to tell you about a little bit about me, for those who don't know me well enough. Who is Humphrey? So I run a marketing company called Juga Marketing, and then my experience with WeChat is actually I grew up in Vancouver, and I had a chance to actually run a startup company doing business development when I was in Beijing back in 2008. So I stayed there for 3 years. So even working in there and start comparing to the culture differences, I noticed that there's a huge gap. There's a huge gap in the way that people do business over in China in the East versus the way that we kind of structured the way that we're doing it in North America. So I came back in 2010. I worked for a company, a travel company, and then since 2012, I've actually started doing the web marketing business with Juga Marketing. Right now, we're certified in Google Analytics, Google AdWords. But because of my background, because of my interests, I'm really intrigued by the cross culture and social behaviors in marketing. And WeChat is like the perfect bridge for this type of a channel to reach each other. Hi, Richard. Just want to make sure that you get everything. Can you see the slides there, Richard? You can just type into the chat board as well. We just started. So let's see. So what we will learn today. So we can talk about the importance of culture in marketing. Obviously, when you're marketing to a different demographic, the first thing that you need to know is hey, what is the culture background, right? Because you're trying to make them adapt. We're trying to adapt to their behavior, their understanding. It's quite important in a lot of ways, because without understanding it, whatever marketing strategy you have may just gone down the drain. Okay, we're going to talk about some of the cultural mistakes that big brands made, including some of the more recent case, and we're going to go in a little bit more detail. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how WeChat is the only tool that that a lot of Chinese audiences are using. And fourth thing, if we can actually get into that, is how do you translate those cultural values into WeChat? Okay, so consumers' purchasing decisions are aligned with the culture. So I know the background images looks a little bit dark in there, but if you actually see it, it's a street in Shanghai, I believe, and you can see Walmart right at the top corner. They kept a lot of the brandings in there, and they have a direct translation of Walmart, which is it sounds phonetically similar to Walmart. And then you see McDonald's in the back, and then you see I think you see KFC in there somewhere as well. Anyhow, so a lot of big brands are going to China because that is the biggest market that they have. So three cultural mistakes that we can think of right away. Number one, translation. So having the right translation is almost like the most basic things. So a lot of companies at the beginning they're like, or even small businesses, they're like, oh, I actually understand how to do translation by going through Google Translate. I would say Google Translate probably is about like 60% of the times. And if you have very technical focus, very kind of a domain knowledge kind of driven thing, then Google Translate is not going to get you anywhere. In fact, we're going to talk about a few case studies that made a lot of mistakes. The second thing is not understanding culture. So, and we're going to go back into that a little bit more too. And the third thing is underestimating the power of the social media, which is a lot of people would think that social media, yes, it's a tool, but you see how a lot of people, a restaurant, made or break their business based on the reviews. If you've got a bad review, it's going to start having a lot of bad reputation within your business, and it's the same thing when you're doing business for China. Okay, so this is a very famous case study regarding to translation. So when Pepsi entered China, that was back in the 80s, I think. So they came up with they used the same slogan that they've had when they were marketing in North America. So the slogan that they had was "Come alive with the Pepsi generation." So I'm not sure if you all remember that tagline, but it's yeah, they've used that for quite a bit, the Pepsi generation. But the literal translation in Chinese, I don't know who they've found from for a ad agency perspective. They've actually translated it into Pepsi brings your ancestors back from the dead. Okay, so if you start imagining people seeing this kind of ad with the Chinese translation, I wouldn't want to drink Pepsi. But in comparison, Coca-Cola spent a lot of money researching and understanding the the taste and the how Chinese people would deliver their taste, understanding or reacting to a taste, and they actually named themselves 可口可乐 for Coca-Cola, which in turns it sounds like delicious cola. So if you start thinking about this, having a right name, having the right tagline would actually make or break the business. And it took a long time for Pepsi to recover. And until now, I think Pepsi is still lagging way, way behind when they're talking about like with Chinese demographic, or not just in China, but like the Chinese demographic in general. Okay. Actually, if you have any questions, feel free to either go on the chat and say something, or if you want to unmute yourself, that's totally fine as well. Okay, and then we're talking about culture and how a company is not understanding the culture of Chinese audiences. This is a very, very fresh news. This is a very recent example. If you look at data, it's literally last week. Okay, so Dolce & Gabbana, they are Italian fashion brands. They were hoping to create a fashion show in Shanghai for this week. So in preparation for that, they actually made a couple of videos that are in Chinese with a girl that's messing around with some Italian food with a pair of chopsticks. So I think to me the concept is it's actually quite I think it's quite innovative, but it's the way that they deliver it that really had the issue with a lot of Chinese consumers. So they had a series of 3 videos, and then with the 3 videos, what they've done is that they have a Chinese girl who's acting, not knowing how to eat a plate of spaghetti or pasta, or they don't know how to eat a cannoli, and then one of them is they use a pair of chopsticks to break it apart, and then to use it to actually cut up the pizza, and then just looking confused. Okay, so it is actually that the gesture of not pretending not knowing how to use the chopsticks while eating other food, alongside with the language and all. That's kind of demeanoring like the Chinese culture. I'm not sure if you know that too, but for a lot of Chinese culture, or Chinese or Asian culture in general, we're talking about like Korean, Japanese, Vietnamese, a lot of East Asian culture, Southeast Asian culture as well. They do use chopsticks quite a bit as part of the daily life. A lot of the culture, there's a lot of taboos that you don't want to mess with chopsticks. And later on, I'd love to send you a video and say, hey, how Chinese actually think of the chopsticks as family, as tradition, as respect. So it's a big thing for them. And for the owners of Dolce and Gabbana to actually have to come out and publish an apology video, and people still all over China were boycotting them. Okay, they're boycotting the brand, all the stores. They're like, I'm not going to be selling any D&G products, and a lot of their stock actually dropped quite a bit, and then by understanding that, and people are saying that can they even recover of working with Chinese demographic anymore, right? That brand may just be erased, but we don't know. Let's see how Chinese people tend to be quite forgiving, and we'll see how this happens, this unfolds in the future as well. Any questions so far from any of you? Okay.
All is good.
Okay, sounds good. Um, so WeChat, so that's the one app that rules them all in China. I'm sure you've seen the video from yesterday, but I'm gonna play it again. So in fact, this time I'm gonna turn down the volume, and I'm going to be focusing on just walking you through what exactly is this video trying to depict. And it's a good test to see how well Skype deliver for a video. All right, so this basically talks about how a guy wakes up, you start discovering other people, and this part is very similar to the newsfeed for Facebook. If you try and compare the apps between the East and the West. And then this part is that when they go into a street vendor, they start scanning the QR code. As you've seen yesterday, people actually, all you need to do is just present yourself with a QR code, and people can scan each other. And again, just talking to friends, setting up the groups. This was what we've done. We've created the unofficial Burnaby Board of Trade group yesterday, and I think it's going to be soon becoming an official group for them. And this is actually some of the mini programs. One of them is being a shop that you can just buy online and pay automatically using the WeChat Pay function. And this one is talking about how do they split bills when they're in a restaurant. They're going to going Dutch and just splitting the bill. And this is the red pocket that we sort of quickly went over last time. And this is kind of the functionalities that they've done, and just winding down with playing some games with friends. I think that's the key. So as you can see, a lot of these functionalities, yes, we've seen that in the Facebook apps, in the WhatsApps of the world, with the Instagram of the world. But the power of it really is from the fact that everybody's using it. Okay, and we start talking about the numbers, and then with Facebook, we're talking about 2.2 billion monthly users actively. With WeChat, is so far has been 1 billion, a little bit more than 1 billion monthly users. And when we start talking about the population of China, it's 1.3 billion Chinese population, but the online it's about 800 million. So the rest of them, you probably can think about pretty much everybody who is of the online age are on WeChat. Okay, and I'm just talking about online age because we're guessing that people who are online age are the age from 15 to 65 kind of thing. But a lot of older people in China actually started using that as well. So that number and that active user number is actually beyond that the Chinese active user age, along with the overseas Chinese that are using that, or countries that are nearby that does a lot of businesses, they would be the active users as well. So Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, these are the actually top 3 countries that is outside of China that's been using WeChat a lot. And when we start comparing the daily messages being sent between users, we're talking about WhatsApp, which is part of Facebook as well. You got 60 billion versus about 38 billion daily messages. So the messages are really up there as well as the main way that companies start talking to the clients, companies start talking internally, and then families and friends start talking to each other. That's really where the messages are so high. And I think the third point that I want to point it out too is that the online transaction side, it's really strong. If you look at PayPal, there's 244 million users, but with WeChat Pay, pretty much everybody who has a bank account in China, who has WeChat, they are signed up for WeChat Pay. So this is why you see that 800 million users is more similar to the number of active users, internet users in China. Okay, and then a lot of them actually been using it day to day. And my friend was telling me that the last time that they were in China, a lot of vendors, they don't take cash, right? So that really does bother me a lot. Okay, and this slide we had it before as well. So why does it matter? As I said to you, this is actually the slide that means a lot to me, because us being in Vancouver, if you don't have a direct relationship with China, you seem like, hey, this is not for me. But here's the truth. Okay, so every day so every week there's 118 flights that fly between Vancouver and China, and it's brought in like 330,000 visitors from mainland China. And these are stats from 2017. And with 2018, I can only imagine this number being increased, because the last in 2018, it was actually a tourism year, where they had strike deals to bring in more Chinese tourists to Canada. So within Greater Vancouver, because a lot of us are small business owners and we work with local businesses only, here are some numbers from Census, Statistics Canada 2016. Okay, so with the overall population with Greater Vancouver at about 2.4 million, okay, 200,000 plus are immigrants from mainland China. And we're talking about recent immigrants, so the last 5 years, okay? And that's 9%. Imagine 9% of the population. And we're not even counting about students, visitors. We're not even counting about those numbers. And if you start looking about not just from the Greater Vancouver perspective, if you start looking into the certain neighborhoods, if you go into Richmond, if you go to a metro town, if you go to pockets of Vancouver, you actually will see a much higher concentration of people who speak Chinese and who uses the app. So if you're running a business, whether if you're retail, if you're a service provider, WeChat really is the tool to use to attract these clients. Okay, so how do you translate culture in WeChat? So as we talk about it, WeChat is the daily tool that everybody's been using. Um, Culture in marketing is quite important. So I think I briefly touched upon that too yesterday. The first thing that you need to know is understanding the power of relationship. So building up the 关系. Okay, so when you start even in web marketing in marketing points, you need to touch a potential clients at least 5 to 7 times, right, to get permission to sell. Okay, and in a lot of ways that is the building up of the relationship, and that's what really 关系 is. Okay, so within WeChat, a lot of the groups are the best way to actually interact is actually to start talking to them, and that's the only way. So you can do it by sharing your daily news feed. That's what they call the moments. Or you can do just go into the group and just commenting or liking some of the posts. That would be the first way to build the relationship. The other ways to think about it is to by gifting and red pocket, and that's a huge part of the Chinese culture as well. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with red pockets, the concept of red pockets. So during Chinese New Year, red pockets are often given from parents to child, or from the boss to their staff, the employer to the employee, as a thank you, right? Or as a way to just provide a greeting. And there's a huge backstory behind why they're giving red pockets and how does that work. And we're actually able to translate that quite well in the WeChat app, just by saying, hey, giving some motivation, monetary motivation, to say, hey, thank you for doing this, and thank you for opening up my article, for example. That's a great way to start building up a relationship as well, I think. And with group interaction, as we see, we've had a group that we just formed yesterday, and hey, it's really up to individuals to say, hey, by the way, this is what I do, without being too spammy, or understanding what the group is about, who the audience is. And that's why you start seeing a lot of groups that's popping up. A lot of these groups are private, or even if they're searchable, it's actually quite difficult to be searched for. So the only way that you get into a group is to get invitations. Okay, is to be invited by somebody, or if you met somebody and say, hey, let me add you in certain groups. So that's a way to build up the relationship as well. And I think that the last point that I've made as well is to make sure that you brand yourself well. Okay, you brand yourself well. I compare this to LinkedIn, because LinkedIn, being as a professional kind of a social network, a big part of it is how do you present yourself, having a right profile, having the profile photo, having the description and information, and what's showing up in your LinkedIn, and that would be a way to just kind of understanding when a potential lead or client or a connection sees you. Okay, what would they see? So I urge you, especially the ones who just created an account yesterday, please at least put a profile picture on and see for yourself, like, if that makes a difference for you. This slide we talked about a little bit as well yesterday, about how the sales funnel is. Again, because WeChat is more of a one-on-one sales funnel, so a lot of times people need time to build up an understanding who you are. So it doesn't work very well if all you do is just blasting out marketing materials. So these are the 5 stages that I've set in as well. So that the 5 stages are discovery, consumption, relationship building, engagement, and the consent to sell. And they don't necessarily have to go in sequence, and they can go back and forth as well, meaning that you can be hovering between discovery and consumption stage, and you may never really get into relationship building. But really, if you start thinking about it, if you want to have success in marketing and selling on WeChat, you really, really have to go through these five stages. So we go in a little bit more detail what these stages are. So with discovery, it really is about how do people find you? How do people find you? So when you meet people from a networking event, when you scan the QR code, that's a form of discovery, right? But this is kind of an offline, in-person discovery. And when you start thinking about online ways to do discovery, you start seeing people in groups, right? They may send out a business card or a product or a promotion that they have, and that's a way that you can think of it as a discovery. Okay, just understanding the media consumption, right? And then also there are also quite a few of these local WeChat groups as well, and also local WeChat media. And a lot of people actually read these news. A lot of these are in Chinese only, and then people actually read these news. These news may be the news from China, but they also international news as well as local Vancouver news as well. So there's actually quite a few of these medias around. So that will be a good way to discover what an article or an interest may be. With consumption, you really have to start thinking about whether they are reading. Just start by reading the material, understanding who your target audience is or who your potential client is. Okay, so with consumption, there are a couple of forms. One way is start thinking about if you go into your WeChat, you can probably start, if you start adding a few friends, you can see their news feeds. You can see the news feeds, and that's a way when people start updating when they gone to an event. That's a way for them to say, oh, I'm there. If you consume it, and you can like it, you can share some of the things that they've shared, and that's really go into the relationship building as well. So just getting the kudos and say, hey, I really like what you've done, thank you. And in a time that a lot of social engagement are there, you really have to start thinking about strategically how do you build the relationship, and what kind of material that you put out on the social media just to make sure that you build your own brand properly. And engagement is really when you start telling them, hey, this is what I'm doing, and when they show interest. So for example, a webinar that I'm running right now, it really is an engagement. It really is an engagement because we've gone through the discovery. You found me from the Board of Trade. You probably understand that's probably what it is. You sort of went through my 10-minute presentation. That's the consumption stage. Relationship building is a little bit short time because this is a little bit short notice. So we didn't have time to get to know each other a little bit. But from that part, by coming into the webinar, we start understanding, and during the introduction period, start understanding what your expectations are. As well, you can reach me from the groups and the public account page, and that's the form of really relationship building. And this is really the engagement. The webinar itself today is the engagement time. So it really goes to the consent to sell. Really goes to the consent to sell. So I do have something to sell, and and that's what it is. So with the WeChat training, it's a 3-course system. So these are so far are in-person courses. So the courses would go over a couple of things. The first thing, as we talked about, the culture and the mindset is always the most important part. So it's a 4-hour in-person course that we run. And we've ran it a couple of times already with great feedback. A lot of people who has a customer in the Chinese demographic, or if they have a staff who is Chinese, or even if they have a neighbor who is Chinese, they kind of want to understand, hey, why do they do things that they do right now? Or they're just trying to understand that culture side. I've also had a couple of people who are Chinese, but they were born here, so they actually know nothing about, they know very little about how Chinese people in the mainland China actually think or work, and they like to know a little bit more. So that's the course that is for that, the cultural mindset training. And of course, we also have something called like the WeChat operation training. So that is the how. It's kind of teaching business owners how to operate a WeChat successfully. So how do you use a group to engage potential clients? How do you start a group chat? How do you do things? So this is a lot of the hows that would teach small skill sets and how to do it better. In terms of the third one, the marketing strategy and training, that one is really for the overall strategy and how to use WeChat as part of the overall social media kind of channel, as part of your corporate channel of to do marketing, not just in China but also for Chinese demographic in North America. And we're talking about when you start thinking about social media channel, we start thinking about Facebook, we start thinking about Instagram. How do you work these two channels or these existing social media channels with WeChat at the same time, and making sure that your salesperson who's on the ground would know how to apply these materials that they have. So these are the three courses that we offer currently. And of course, with the whole WeChat ecosystem, we really need supporting services such as the payment gateways, because if you're on a retail, if you want to start receiving more Chinese customers, if you tell them, hey, we actually do WeChat Pay, we actually accept WeChat payments, then it's actually a big plus for the business. At the same time, we also would need support services, people who would help manage accounts, for example. So these are the support services that we are looking to build with our partners at the same time. Our goal is to become the #1 English-based resource for WeChat outside of China. Outside of China. So we do have a next training available, and that's happening in a week's time, December 6th. The course is 4 hours in class. It's not being taught by me. It's actually somebody else can actually teach a little bit better than I do. My goal is just to go over the concept, putting it in perspective. But the 4-hour class is being taught by a very good speaker, and she's very experienced in both Chinese and the Western business as well. There is a fee for it. It's $498. And if you want more information, definitely email me after as well, because we only have a few more spots available. So the title, Introduction to Marketing in China. You can also just buy the ticket on the website as well, WeChatTraining.com. And we are planning for the How course, the WeChat for Business user, and that's the course that we're trying to just finalize it in January 2019. And at the beginning, these courses are all going to be in person only, because I do value the feedback, and I also do value a lot of the interaction, because it's really a big part understanding what it is. And some of the intended audience for these courses, so business servicing visitors from mainland China. So a lot of these are restaurants and hospitality, marketing managers for national brands that are looking to expand. Okay, so these are people who may be producing food and services that will look to expand to China. We're also looking for owners or marketing managers of the local brands looking to service Chinese, I would say residents, Chinese people who are here in Vancouver or here in North America. Okay, so that's all I have, I think. So here's my contact info. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them away. We did it in the 40 minutes. Any questions? Okay, well, if not, then I'm just going to end it like that. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, reach out to me. My phone number is on here, and yeah, my email is there, very reachable. Uh, but if not, then I think I'm gonna finish the webinar off, and I'll send the recording to you guys as well if you're interested. But thank
Sure.
you so much for coming.
Thanks, Humphrey.
All right, thanks so much. Have a good day.
Talk to you soon.
See you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, Humphrey. See you soon.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm just gonna stop